everyone. I'm Gemma Starr, and welcome to another episode of Heart Warriors. This is a series I've been inspired and guided to do thanks to my energetic connection with Kata. Kata is the sacred masculine site in Central Australia, very close to Uluru, our beautiful sacred feminine site. What I'm here to do is to give a platform to our men so they can articulate their journey into the heart, sharing with us their experiences, their tools, their wisdom. What insights can they now share with other men walking this path into the heart? And of course, us women who are walking right there beside them. This is our Heart Warrior number 46. And it will be our last one until after Christmas now, because I am heading out to Uluru and Kata for about 10 days, and I'll be out there for the solstice. So going to be doing whatever I'm guided to do there, and really enjoying my time connecting to Mother Earth and of course both beautiful rock formations out there. Our guest today is a fellow Aussie, and his name is Steve X Mcnamara. Now, Steve is the host of the Wild Man Revolution podcast, and he's also a men's coach, mentor. And so I'm looking forward to interviewing Steve and finding out all about his journey into the heart. Enjoy. Hello, Steve X Mcnamara. Welcome to Heart Warriors.
Hey, Gemma. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
My pleasure. Yeah, let's find out all about your journey into the heart. But I always like to start with a question. Who is Steve X Mcnamara without his labels? Who is he inside, the inside man?
Okay, well, I'm a father. I have an amazing 4-year-old son. He has been an absolute gift. I have a beautiful wife, Chaitanya. She does amazing things in the world. And at my heart, I'm just a man doing his best to be a man, to play whatever role that is in the world. I don't think it's scripted. I don't think we've had any real full role models before us. And I'm just writing my own script as I go. And I love helping people, especially men, from my own journey. I know we're going to dig into that today. And yeah, I'm very, very simple. I like fishing, hiking, camping, spending time with my son, doing crazy stuff like picking up wild venomous snakes and other reptiles and all this sort of thing. I love nature. Yeah, that's me. Short and simple and sweet.
Yeah, very Aussie. I love it. Okay, so Steve, let's look at what shaped you into being the man you are today. So can we start with your childhood, and what would you say was the most challenging time and issue that you had to overcome?
It's an interesting question because I probably wouldn't have put anything up until I started like my growth journey and everything, as anything was challenging in my childhood. Little did I know. But to answer your question, I think one of the biggest things that's probably had the most impact on my life is like the dynamic of the family at home, like dad always working. Although my dad did spend some great time with me, like all my bush skills, like all my adventuring, like that came through him, but it was the limited time I spent with him, and he's always working really, really hard for a long time. And I never really got to see him much. And like even built our own house. Even when he was at home, he was working. So that really shaped me when I got into my later years, the last decade, especially when I started to unlearn a lot of things. But even seeing my mum, like I got 3 siblings as well. I'm the oldest. But the most challenging thing I think that has had the most impact is like seeing like how my dad really showed up in the world. Again, there's a lot of great things, but there's a lot of things that I was like, oh, not me. And there probably wasn't one particular time. So there wasn't one thing that's like, well, that was a big challenge in my childhood. And if I shift to one of the other things, I know I had serious anger problems as a kid. Well, I have right through my adult years, a lot of the trouble that I got into, you could say, like a lot of the violence, a lot of the substance abuse and everything. Like I was always extremely angry. And I do remember that as a kid, and it had me feel like there was something wrong with me for a long time. I think, yeah, that was my go-to. So that was, if anything, was a real challenge, is how I had no idea how to handle being so angry and so highly emotional. Now I know it's my superpower, but as a child, yeah. So, and again, with that, there's no particular thing. I have many, many instances where I could give a particular example where I was extremely angry and I got into fights. And as a kid, I can remember way back till even when I was 4, I can remember having like this really hardcore temper. And it was like, it was extreme. There was no middle ground. It was like whatever didn't fit my model of the world, that was it. I was like full lunatic mode.
Yeah, well, let's open this up because a lot of men deal with anger. So, from the point you are now, from the man you are now, and you look back at that little boy, what was the underlying theme to his anger? What was he angry about, other than things weren't fitting into his world? Have you analysed that? And
I've done so much healing around inner child, and especially if I relate it to my dad. I'm doing work at the moment around my mum and how I viewed certain scenarios unconsciously when I was like a baby and 1 to 2, about being unloved, feeling helpless, and of course, like cognitively making it mean that I didn't fit in or was unloved. Like that was my story, and because I was unloved, the only way I could get attention was, well, if I threw these little fits or tantrums, and I had no choice but to get attention. So that was a big thing. And again, there's been many healings that I've gone back to, or many releases I've had going back to these times where it was unloved. This certain incident, whatever it was, I made it mean that I was unloved, or I was I was, again, helplessness has been a big theme for this year, which has been interesting. Although I've been on this journey for probably 8 or 9, probably more years, it still comes up when I'm doing the work. There's just these deeper layers. So I think that's been one of the biggest things, is like that, yeah, wanting to be loved. And the only way I could get that, being held or getting attention or the significance, very significance driven too, ask my wife, in a healthy way. But back then it was in an unhealthy way. I needed that attention. So yeah, that was probably some of the root cause of it.
yeah, I think you knocked the nail on the head when you said attention. Do you equate attention with love? Did that little boy equate attention with?
Yeah, 100%. Again, being like in the human needs, I like looking at these. Significance is a big one for me too, in a healthy way. I love being the center of attention. I love being the one that people are looking at and going to, or whether it's playing, whether it's getting guidance, whatever it is. I really love that, and it's a healthy thing. But when I was a kid, if I didn't get it, I made it mean that I wasn't loved. And when I got the attention, or that, oh, that means I'm loved now. And the patterns to be able to receive that, all right, you got to be left out. The only way you can get attention is by throwing yourself on the floor and yelling and screaming and breaking things and punching things and all that. So yeah.
How did that continue into your school years? And yeah, so how did you deal with it in, say, primary school and high school?
I could give a particular incidents, and I remember this so clearly. I remember going to primary school. I didn't deal with it well, not well at all. And even the setup of schools, and I'm really big on this now, like privately in the community, how they manage humans with emotions and that, and what's taught in that. But for me, it was like, I used to say we'd go to school early and we'd play a little game of cricket before that. I'd take my bat, take my ball, the old scenario, I'd throw the bat if I didn't like it. Or I used to go crazy. There was no there. And I used to feel like I was in the right. And I used to get categorized as I had like ADHD and a problem and all this, because I was just highly emotional. And then I'd get bullied, even though I don't really, for being that highly emotional kid. So then what that made me do, well, it didn't make me do, it led me to do. I'm like, okay, if I'm being bullied, then I'm going to fight. So it sort of compounded things. Now that didn't change up until my 30s. That pattern never changed. I never dealt with it. I never knew how to. At least in my 20s, even my later teens, I used to go away and escape sort of the world and go on my adventures, go fishing, go exploring, go hunting and all that. That was one of the ways that I dealt with it. But again, that was suppressing it as well. So I really had really turbulent, probably 2.5 decades thinking that this anger was just me. My story was, I am angry. That's just who I am. And I know even in my work now that resonates with a lot of men, because a lot of men, they're angry and they've been judged, ridiculed, separated, whatever, because of that, because there's no understanding of like that energy and what it is. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. Steve, can you speak directly to those men now, the men that are dealing with anger issues, and just let them know how they can start their healing journey?
Well, okay, directed at anger. Anger is like, I like to look at, say, the NLP model where they talk about the emotions in a scale. Anger's like, you've got a jar of emotions. Anger's like the lid. And it will fight. When you're angry as men, that's the first emotion you'll generally feel, because it'll fight. And it's at the same time it's fighting to keep all these other emotions in. But if you looked at that and you're like, okay, I am angry. I'm constantly angry. It's always coming up. I'm frustrated, whatever it is, at my wife, at my boss, at my ex, whatever. If you stopped looking at that anger as a problem, as something that you don't want to feel, and say, okay, what if I was to feel this and own this and go, this is my anger? Okay. Is it the start of the journey? You start working, go, okay, I can own that I'm feeling this. Oh, I'm going to work on some healthy ways to start expressing this anger that's not directed and projected at people. Your life will change because you're taking the lid off that jar and allowing yourself to feel, instead of fighting with the anger to suppress this because you don't want to feel it. Again, anger is my superpower. It is my superpower. My wife can attest to this. I am an intense mofo. I am. But I let my anger come up. So yeah, for men out there, stop shaming your anger and don't let others shame it either. You just need to learn a healthy way to express it.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, well, let's explore this further. How do men learn to express it healthily?
Number one, I think environment is really important. It's probably not a number one, but I'll say that's the people you find yourself around. A lot of men are in their jobs. They got their bosses, they got their workmates or family. These two things that people go, oh, they're my workmates. Like, I've got to have them there. Or they're my family. They will generally go to them for advice, which is just a waste of time. I'm sorry. It is a waste of time. If you've got an environment where you've got supportive peers around you that are somehow self-conscious or in the work, or there's no levels to this, but they're aware of certain things, you've got to be around these sorts of men. And I'm not a big fan of like gatherings where men come together just to talk about their problems, but it does help if that environment is conducive to there's other steps involved or there's other things. It's really important. So environment's number one. The people you place yourself around, you're responsible for that, shifting your environment. And I think from that too, being okay to understand that there are deeper things at play than just this surface level anger. So you actually do need to talk to maybe a professional. Unattached to doing work long term, I remember in my 20s, the only time I would talk to a so-called professional is when I was at rock bottom, when I'd made some really, really hardcore mistakes and like was in real trouble, going to court and all these things. And I thought I was going to jail. And I'd reach out to a counselor just to express that stuff. But it was someone of authority who I needed to put my trust in. That helped a lot too. So there are a couple of things. Can you ask the question again? Because I do go on tangents.
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to be able to give men some tools to change disruptive, or let's say non-healthy anger into healthy anger, what you call a superpower now. How do they shift that?
I like to use the word tools because this is what I've got an integrated growth tool belt, I call it. So it's tools that I've used myself and embodied myself over many years, picked up from different mentors, coaches, just masters, even in the Eastern sort of medicine realm and all this sort of thing. But some of the tools that I use with this, again, number one, owning your anger. Okay, I'm anger. Being okay that it's going to come up is probably going to scare you because you got deep trauma in your nervous system and ingrained. You're not going to fix this anger. You're not going to get rid of it forever by using these tools. These are like management tools. So for me, my number one go-to is moving my body, but moving my body in a healthy way to feel the anger, not going to the gym and lifting weights because my wife's been a bitch. not that. Not going there and going, oh, my boss has been mean to me, or this, I'm not making the money I want, or I don't feel good enough, and then training that in, because you're sort of anchoring in the problem. But move your body to go, I'm just going to feel. I'm going to learn how to feel through my body. So I do things like yoga, qigong. I go to the gym. I love the gym, but it's always, it's not to just like get rid of it. It's to feel it. That's my number one tool. And what goes with that, I'm a breathwork practitioner. I facilitate it. I love it. I do it every day. I am so disciplined with that because it is the best for feeling. Has all amazing health benefits, but for me, it helps me feel. I'm focused on the conscious breathing. I've got different techniques that I've needed to learn over time, but that helps me feel. And when I can feel, whatever situation that's triggered me or given me the scenario, again, I use the example of wife, because that's a common one that comes to me with my male clients. It's like they're holding on to stuff from their ex and fighting, and there's a lot of anger. For me, I'm like, once I can do that, I have issues. I had my wife in here before having our money and lifestyle meeting. That still brings up stuff. I still get triggered. I still have things that like, oh, that doesn't sit well with me. I'm like, okay, cool. Instead of just loading up on her and like projecting my anger, I'm like, I've got to a point, one of my tools is like, hey, this is triggering me. I've got to go do some stuff, and I'll generally go do some breath work. You know, so that there are a couple of things. I've got some men laugh at me. I've got a big boxing bag in the garage. It's not hanging up. I don't box it. I don't take my body out on it, but I've got a baseball bat there, and I'll take to that. I'll shift some energy. I'll yell. I'll go grab a pillow. I'll yell into a pillow. These are simple things. The breath work, there's a bit more to it, but simple tools just to shift that energy, to go, okay, I'm okay to feel that energy as intense it is. When you shift that, you can better communicate from that place. You can better go back and confront if you need to, if there's something that's going on there, or get some sort of result out of whatever scenario you found yourself in where you're getting extremely angry. Communicate better. So there's some of my go-tos. The boxing bag one with the baseball bat's my wife's go-to for her clients too.
Yeah, that's great. And we will get into the details of breath work. But I wanted to ask the question. So in your past, or with clients that that you're dealing with who are angry, have you ever dealt with domestic violence? Because I'd really like some tools here. We did a whole show on it yesterday, but it's such an important aspect that I really want to ask you, because I would say, I don't know, but do the two go hand in hand? How do some men manage it and not?
If there's any domestic violence, there's one party that's not managing it well. Simple. That's the first thing. And without going into clients that I've worked with and working with, there has been cases where they have been involved with domestic violence, and it's even for me as a coach or someone who's working with trauma, I have really strong boundaries of even working with men that have had domestic violence there. I really do, because there's a level of personal responsibility that happens, both men and women, before they even work with me. Like that, if they can't do that, they're not going to get the results they want. And if I see it when domestic violence comes up, that yeah, there are root causes to why this is played out. There is childhood stuff and that, but at the same time, if the man, will use this because we're talking about men, isn't willing to take radical responsibility for every part of their life, they're actually probably not going to get to the bottom or the root cause of that. And it's going to show up in other areas, because it's not an anger thing either. It's so much more than anger. We touched on like not being loved, the things we witnessed when we were young, the thing we witness and model in society, like how much violence is out there, movies, news, TV, that is basically hammered into people, but it's hammered into people in a flow that's giving some sort of result or some sort of emotional feeling. So there's so much more than it just domestic violence being an anger thing. That's my thing. And some of the men that I have worked, so without blocking it off and saying, no, it works with me and I won't help anyone that has experienced this. Generally, one of the big things that I see helps them is they need to learn to love themselves again. Yeah, we can do the unconscious stuff, but they've got to start doing the work to come back to that. And again, I have had a couple of clients that have amazing results with this, and it's taken a long time because they're basically unlearning 40, 45 years of shit. Like, at the same time, it's not easy. It's not easy. Like, getting them to cry, being okay with that, and continue to let go and let go and let go. It's powerful work. And again, domestic violence in there, someone else has been hurt too. There's guilt, there's shame, there's because I believe like everyone that's in my reality, every man, it doesn't matter what they've done, there's a part of them that's good in their heart, that wants to be good, wants to do things right. There's just a lot of shit that's got in the way across their life. And yeah, it's I'm glad that you're diving into the interviews. It's not a this is how it is sort of conversation either. It's because of this, and this is what you do about it. It's very broad.
No, exactly. And this is why it's just shedding light on it. And, as you said, there's so much guilt, shame, and silence around it. So thank you for that insight. And I loved what you said there. Okay, let's move on to your adulthood. What would you say was the deepest, darkest rock bottom moment?
Well, I don't see myself as an adult at this time, even though I was in my late 20s. I don't see myself as coming into a man until I was like mid-30s. That's a message for all you men out there. There's no initiation in our society really at the moment. And generally our initiations come from our deepest, darkest moments if we decide to take responsibility. So I have many. There was a period, and I'll talk about this in a period because there was many events that unfolded in this period. Now, I ended up going to court a few times, generally for violence against police and other people. I was in fight. I had kept repeating my cricket bat incident from school. I was like there, and if a bully come at me, I'm like, okay, you want to go me? I'd fight harder. So I found myself going to court in a place that was 6 hours away from my home. Only 3 people knew that I'd got into trouble, and I actually broke a glass on another guy's face, a bigger guy's face, in a pub fight. And it was really bad in terms of I didn't want anyone to know about this. I didn't know how to deal with it. I was in so much fear. Very grateful for my boss at the time because he let me, he's like, where are you going? Why do you need a day off? I'm like, oh, I had to tell him, but my parents didn't know. None of my family, one of my friends, that's it. And I was going to this court case for 12 months, and I thought I was a goner. I thought I was going to jail because leading up to that, I'd had an accident in my car that I drove off from. I think I was like 28 years old. I was just so not in my body and so unconscious and just running on this. I can't even describe it, but for this 12-month period, I was just making mistakes left, right, and center. It's almost like I was on this self-destruction path that I just needed to sabotage so hard and so bad that I needed to be rock bottom. For 12 months, I was driving down once a month to this court case and getting nowhere. And I remember one of my lawyers at the time for the accident that I was in, he confronted me before going into court. Now, I thought lawyers had my back. Well, in hindsight, he did. But at the time, he come up to me, he goes, you're full of shit. You're lying. I don't know how I can defend you, yada, yada, yada. Now, I didn't think I was, but this smashed me going in before court. I sat down, and at that point there, I'd done everything to pump myself up to be confident for court. I sat there and I just couldn't help but cry. I'm like, this is the end. I'm done. This is it. And I was in Melbourne. It was interesting because even driving to court while I had no license, this is the stuff I was doing. I was like, if I was getting locked up, my car was staying there. My mum didn't know, my dad, no one knew. And that was, I could say, a rock bottom moment without knowing what was going to happen. I needed to feel what I felt. I needed to feel totally helpless. And again, so grateful for that lawyer. We became really good friends. He's a great guy. I have great stories out of all this. I didn't go to jail. I didn't know. I went into the court and I got a slap on the wrist, which was mind-blowing. But then there was the anxiety about the other one. So I stayed in this. I was still rock bottom. I was still late 20s. I'd always held my job. I worked hard. I did all that, what I thought was what I had to do to be good in the world. But I couldn't I couldn't get anything right in the rest of my life. I was like so down on myself. I had so much self-hatred. I was a failure. That continued until I went to this other court case, which was really, they recommended a 4-year jail sentence in this court case. And I was beyond anxiety. I was standing up there shaking, and I'm very, very grateful that I had some good men around me back then, even though some of the stuff we did was probably unhealthy and you could put as toxic, a lot of the partying and that, but they held positions of authority in society, like presidents of clubs and things like this. And they wrote some really nice stuff about me. And I remember standing in court, and the judge was, this is so clear to me, I was feeling really ashamed, to tell you the truth, of this period. And he's like, so I've gone through all the evidence, you got a recommendation, you've been coming back here for 12 months. What I can see on the surface, you're a good lad. Everything that's been written about you, he read out a couple of paragraphs, and I just had tears coming out of my eyes. I'm like, who would say that stuff about me? I'm an asshole. I'm a dickhead. I'm like, all these things were coming up for me. And the judge goes, even the police that were investigating this have given you a good rap. You have been fantastic, they have said. You've been a really good guy. You've been honest. You've been truthful. And he said, very different than the guy you got in a fight with. So we're going to drop all charges. We're going to give you, we're not going to convict you of any more. They still gave me some convictions. They were a huge slap on the wrist. And I feel that was like, okay, that was like, that's it. I'm not doing this crap again. I didn't change anything, but that was that period of a real rock bottom, hiding stuff from people, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed. That was it. If I can't get through this, I'm just going to rot in jail. Whatever stories were going through my head, and again, it might have been my rock bottom, but it in no way, for any of your viewers or listeners, no way did that mean it was the point where I got my life sorted. But it was bottom. It was a dark time for me. What was going on in my head, the thoughts, like I was going to drive away to the bush and just become not talk to humans, and even really like suicidal thoughts, which I never really give power to, but they were there. I got to be real and honest. Like I think a lot of men out there, a lot of people out there have them and think there's something wrong with that. Sometimes stuff comes up in our head, and then we've just got to, okay, is that my truth? Is that my truth? It's what I'm feeling right now. I'm depressed. I'm like, I want to end it. Is that my truth? And every time that come up, I'm like, nah, that's not my truth. But again, in rock bottom, you just got to, sometimes we need the dark night of the soul. And I believe that. Or we got to face the dragon head on. And we've got to let it like destroy us to the ground and beat us to the ground before we can see the light, before we can trust ourselves.
Definitely. And I love how you referred to that as a modern day initiation for men and of course women. But yeah, and this is a question I always ask in these series, because so many men out there are in a challenging place and rock bottom or close to rock bottom, and it's so inspirational to see all these men that I have on Heart Warriors have had a similar place, and now we're going to hear how they spiraled up and started their healing journey. So what was the first steps when you decided that this was never going to happen again? What were the first steps that you took to change your life?
It's interesting. Like I mentioned before, that I was already using something that was healthy for me. It was like going away every few weekends and fishing and camping. I love that. And I think as men, I'm like big on this too with my men, like find something that you enjoy, that you can have hands on, or you can create, or something like that. Fishing for me, like that was the thing, because there's so much involved that people don't understand. It's not sitting around. I'm very proactive, and even my boating, my hunting, or whatever I'm doing, always doing stuff. And it was really a healthy thing for me. The only thing unhealthy about it was I was escaping the rest of my world. Never looked at it. I just wanted to come back, feel good in nature, do my thing, and go back. Now, that is still my go-to. Still my go-to. It's the number one thing. There is nothing more healing than nature and being yourself in nature. All the men, that's my go-to, especially the ones that are in like CEOs or big business jobs and managers and that. I'm like, you need to get away by yourself and be okay to be with yourself. I think the biggest thing that happened for a few years after that rock bottom. I had other ones, like I overdosed, sabotaging again. I just partied extremely hard. Stopped the violence. It was hard. That stopped. That was a non-negotiable for me going forward. I still got very angry and all that, but I just suppressed. But it helped. It was part of the journey. But when I went, just as I was going into my 30s, so what's it called? My wife always refers to it. It's the return of Saturn or something, whatever it is in 20s. We've got to go through this period to where 30. Just before I turned 30, I got a job in the mines. Now, I was a supervisor in Melbourne in big construction jobs and everything for a decade. For a young guy, I loved position of authority. I was good at what I did, but I always wanted to go to the mines, but I always didn't have the courage. I'd always self-sabotage. This last time, the weekend before, I really self-sabotaged. I ended up in hospital, too many drugs and all this sort of thing. It was like this test of the rock bottom, but it was like this test, you really want this? I ended up going to the mines, and that changed my life because there was boundaries in place. You couldn't drink, couldn't do drugs. There was drug tests. Even though there was an element of that over there, I was like, no, I'm going to go and get fit and healthy. I'm going to do this my way, but it was better. I was over there for nearly 8 years, right from 30 to 35. I worked really hard. I loved it. I disconnected from a lot of my old behaviors. I spent a lot of time by myself. Some of it was unhealthy because I was lonely and sad and this, but I was starting to experience my emotions and be okay with it. I didn't learn any tools then. I didn't have any. I wasn't getting coached. I didn't even have an awareness of that. But there was one time where I had one high pressure job there, working many, many hours, many months at a time, getting paid a lot. But I had one guy that I could confide in who could understand my pressure as a supervisor and what I was doing over there. And he was another supervisor. He became good mates, him and my then boss. And one day I was driving through and I got a phone call from my then boss who I'm mates with. He was a good guy, sort of like an older version of me, really interesting. And he then told me that my mate had committed suicide on the other mine site. And that, to your question, was actually the moment that I asked the one question that really set me on this journey. I had so much emotion. I couldn't believe it. This guy, he's a great guy, healthy. I'm like, it was shock. I was in shock. And then I just asked the question. I'm like, all right, if he's done that, why am I on the planet? What am I doing? What am I doing in this job? What am I doing? Like just working my ass off. And I'm like, well, why am I on the planet? As soon as I asked that, in that really open place, I was cracked open with this so much. And the next 2 years just proceeded to show me little pieces of what's possible. Like I started watching some like motivational stuff on YouTube. I was not a big proponent of social media. I didn't post a picture of me holding a fish and a snake and then I'd get off there. But it's funny looking back now because I love social media. It's how I help a lot of people. But from then, it just started giving me little pieces of the answers. And it took me 2 years to leave the mines. It took me 2 years to leave that. But then I just really dove in, like started going to retreats. I started coaching. I had a coach that I paid a lot of money for. I just started to do the work and I haven't looked back. Hasn't been rainbows and unicorns. I'll give you the tip, but...
Oh, that's so good. Let's get into how heavily were you using drugs?
So,
and what were you using?
Mainly speed, ecstasy, cocaine. I felt really uncomfortable being around people. I had heaps of energy, and it was sort of my go-to, just like drinking. I'd like have a few drinks at the start, and it sort of transitioned me out of drinking as much too. I felt way different. I felt more in control. I didn't feel my emotions enough when I was taking it, but I was like every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, still going to work, even 6 days a week. So I was still fronting up to work. I wouldn't have it at work. Well, there were sometimes I did, I'll be honest. There was sometimes I did because I couldn't come down at work. And I was doing that on and off for probably 13 years from my teens, right through to, that time when I was 30. Now, later in my 20s, the times I used were further apart because I was doing my best at the time to distance myself from it. But whatever unconsciously kept coming up, I'd be a month down the track, you've been a good boy, have it again. I'd go harder. All right, next time, 3 months. But then at the end, I'm like, oh, you haven't had it for 3 months. We'll just have a few beers and we'll just go out to one rave. Then it'd go on for 2 weeks and I'd be down at rock bottom. That what had happened in them times, I'd get back on it, got worse. And I'd have way more and I'd need way more, chasing whatever feeling, was it escape or feeling good or feeling like I fit it in, whatever it would be. Even in my 30s, there was a couple of times where it come into my awareness. Like I'd have a couple of beers, but I really went almost cold turkey on drinking. I was like, it was 4 years, I didn't touch it. Even on women, I went 4 years, no women. I don't know, it was harder. But I did, because that was my mechanism to not have to confront or face or feel. But yeah, I used to even like try to deal there for a while. It was like, oh, if I can deal this, but saying was I used to eat all the profits. Like it's not good. And there were times, and I look back, and it was towards in my 20s when I started to become a big thing in the Melbourne club scene, and it became a big thing around like all my workmates and all that. And I started to get into that, but then something was like, nah, man. And that was sort of at the end of my transition out of it too. It was like, it was that time where it's almost like I needed to experience like my what used to result in all this. I used to have extreme anxiety. Anger was still there, but it was this fear of there. Like, it's like my brain was making up stuff that was going to happen to me. Like, there was bikies coming to get me. There was this person I saw in the club was looking at me strange. And there was all these weird things going on, that because I was in so much anxiety all the time from trying to feel good by taking more. So yeah, it was like a weekend thing, but for many, many years.
Wow. Can you talk to men who are in a similar situation with this drug thing? And, as you said, escapism, not to actually feel. It's a tough one because, once I don't know, but I can only imagine once you stop the drugs, you're inevitably you're going to be overwhelmed with feeling, and you're going to have to deal with it. So how do you do that unless you've got some tools? Can you please talk to those men?
Oh, still comes back to it. The first step is taking radical responsibility for everything in your life and say, that's it. And responsible for everything that's happened up to now. Like, I'm done with it. You need to decide. I'm done with it. You've got all the evidence you need that it's not helping you. It's not helping the people around you, be it your health, be it your relationships, be it your job, your money, whatever it is. If you're using drugs right now, you've got evidence that it's not good for you. You've got to be willing to look at that. And when you can take responsibility for that, it doesn't fix anything, then you can choose to take a step. Because you're gonna have a long road. You are. I'm not gonna bullshit. And I think this is what most are afraid of. And even the puppy dog. But I think this is what most are afraid of, both men and women. Humans, it's like, I know that this isn't good for me. I know this isn't writing, but all that other path, it's more work. It's easier, feels easier for me to just deal with this pain rather than face that pain. The truth is, you gotta do something about it. You've got to decide. It's as simple as that. And as soon as you do, and my male clients know this, and they try to sabotage their journey when they've been doing good. This stuff pops up again and again and again. Just commit for a better life. Don't put a time limit on it. Don't try to fix it. Nothing's broken. Just commit to something that's better, and keep committing to something that's better.
So I'm going to dig into the drug experience, because I want to learn too, and I don't, because I never use them. I want to understand. So if a man was to quit cold turkey, is he also experiencing withdrawal symptoms from those drugs, or is it just the emotional onslaught that he's dealing with?
What I'll do, and I was going to say this before, is a lot of the work I do now is with trauma. And a lot of the things we use is to working with the nervous system. Like if we use a substance, generally it's to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. Now, it has benefits for us. Like we have a drink because we're nervous and we don't fit in. So that's anchoring our nerves. And we have a drink and we calm down because the parasympathetic nervous system's calm down. So we're getting benefit out of these sorts of things. So when you talk about withdrawal symptoms, generally what will happen, and happen with me, we need to replace the drugs, the alcohol first and foremost, with something else that's going to calm down the nervous system. So for me, it was work. It was work. I got busier. Yeah, got me bigger results, and my significance was met by a big reputation and all this sort of stuff. But that was something that was like calming me down, because it was like, what's next, what's next, what's next, filling my time and space. And there was other things going at play there. Gym. I threw myself into the gym. Interesting thing that happened with that too, like that was feeling good, like getting the body moving. That I didn't eat very healthy in the mines. I thought I was, but I was just uneducated. I was just eating a lot of crap. But then it was like I was training the body from a place of not liking it. So it was still something that was calming the nervous system. Now, the withdrawals that we probably think about in the health, what the body is craving. There's not only the nervous system for me, that was actually really tough for me, because I actually attempted to eat healthy, what I thought was healthy in my 20s, but I couldn't eat a carrot, I couldn't eat vegetables, I couldn't eat apples and that, because whatever was going on the inside, I had holes and ulcers and everything from all the drug taking and all the drinking. I couldn't even eat healthy. So my body was craving not only the crap that I was eating that all my body could take in, the drugs. I didn't feel all this stuff when I was taking the drugs. And that took a long time to get sorted too. That took a lot. I used to just eat and eat and eat till I felt full and I didn't get the cravings. So it's generally not craving the drug either. Sometimes it can be craving the feeling, that first feeling of having it. And you're not reaching that, so you take more and more and more. But again, that comes back to the nervous system as well. That comes back to that feeling. Everything we do in life is for a feeling. And really what I can only talk to of the cravings is my experience as well. For some men, it's like more women, more sex. For some, it's like whatever other becomes an addiction or something like that, is just to calm that nervous system. Mine now is breath work. It is an addiction, and I love that addiction. It's fantastic. Mine is doing things that light me up right now. Getting a good night's sleep. What I value. That's how I am like regulating my nervous system now. So, and again, so I never get it took years, I think, to never get them cravings for anything again, for that sort of stuff. It really did take years, even when I got into personal growth. I hadn't drunk in 5 years, and here's this retreat I attended. They had a celebration day. What do you think I did on the 5th day to try and fit in? Drunk. What did I crave? Drugs. I hadn't had them for like 7 years. I hadn't drunk for 5 years. And again, I think this is what scares people out there that are taking drugs now or drinking now. They've made it so normal in their life because of what it's doing to their nervous system and their body, that has these cravings, you could call them, or what they're trying to feel less worse, because it's not feel better. It's it's definitely not feel better. I didn't feel good in my body until probably about 5 or 6 years ago. So there's so much I can unpack about my journey, that going cold turkey, so to say, and the things that came up. But again, getting healthier, getting help, like talking to health experts, like getting some PT sessions, going and talk to a nutritionist or a naturopath. Just have the conversations, and that helped me a lot too. Definitely. That's sort of answer your question, because it's
definitely. No, that's fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Some really good tools there for the toolbox. Let's get into breath work then. Can you please give an overview, and then let's give some practical examples, maybe one for when a man is angry and wants to calm down, maybe another one if it's different for when, maybe you are craving a drug or substance or alcohol.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So first and foremost, like I'm training a bunch of different, I'll call them modalities in breath work. Pranayama is my favorite. A lot of pranayama breath and yogic breathing. For me, if I'm sharing with a client, and this is a good way to put it because this is exactly what I do. Because I have a couple now that are coming off drugs and alcohol, anything nasal breathing, anything that's breathing deep into your belly, because generally what people have been doing with the drugs or the alcohol, they've been calming that parasympathetic nervous system, but that takes them out of fight or flight in an unhealthy way. So we need to get them something that's going to have them regulate or calm that nervous system in a healthy way, and nasal breathing can do this. There's a bunch of cool shit that goes on in the body, and I keep it simple. Even with my clients, I don't go into technical stuff because I want them to do it. As simple as that. Even when I'm teaching this, I'm like, I'm not going to teach you all the what goes on in the body, because I just want you to do it and feel the difference. But breathing through the nose with conscious breathing, my first go-to, count the breath in for 4. Hold it in for 4. Count it out for 4. Hold it out for 4. That's my go-to. It's easy. It's simple. Do that for 2 minutes.
Is that the box breath?
Yeah. It's
just a good visual to have, isn't it? Okay, great. Yeah.
Breathing. And you do that for 5 minutes. Do that for 10 minutes. You actually start to get a bit of a buzzing feeling in the body. It doesn't matter if you haven't done anything. It's really, really simple. My other go-to is move your body. Still, move your body. Be okay to feel your body. A lot of the men that come to me are unhealthy. Not all of them, be it obese, overweight, or disproportionate in their body, carrying a lot of weight here because of stored and stuck emotion generally. But it's like, go move your body and move your body to feel. While you're doing that, focus on your breath. A lot of them are going to the train. They realize they're unhealthy. Oh, I've been training in the gym. Like, cool. Start focusing on your breath. What are you doing with your breathing? What do you mean? So my point here is conscious breathing is the go-to. Conscious breathing. Count it in. Count it in for 8. Do whatever you do, because I don't know if you've tried, because you know box breathing, so you've done breath work before, yeah? Yeah, and conscious breathing, yeah. So did you know that when you're counting your breath, have you noticed that you can't think of anything else?
So it's good for meditation as well.
Amazing.
Yeah. Oh. Open eye meditation, even, because you're doing both. As you said, it's inevitable because you can't do one without the other.
No, and a lot of men are very mind focused, not heart centered. And I think this is really important for this part of the conversation too. Like, when we're in our mind, we've got lots of thoughts, lots of thinking. We want to think our way through things. We're problem solvers, yeah, but a lot of them are generally not good, or they're not beneficial. And our focus is on these. When you start to breathe not only through the nose, breathing deep into the belly, deeper into the lungs, and focusing on that, where are you breathing? Or you're breathing up from here into the heart. You're bringing awareness and focus to the heart. And then what that's going to allow you to do in them moments, again, if it's a breaker pattern, all right, I feel like going to the fridge for a bit. Oh, it's the end of the day. I want a couple of beers. Most men think this is okay. Most men think this is okay during the week, but when they have 30 on the weekend and lose their shit and do something stupid, but that's different. It's all the same, in my opinion. You break the pattern during the week, go onto the fridge, sit down and go, okay, cool. I'm going to flick off the tally or whatever I'm going to do. I'm going to tell my wife I need some space. Most men are afraid to do that.
Men need space, right? We'll talk about that after, because that's really important. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah. Perfect. It's a good one. I've got a really good how I operate in my life and the understanding my wife and I got around that. But in that moment when you're going to go have the beer or the wine or whatever, okay, I'm just going to give myself 5 minutes here. I'm going to sit down. What is it I'm actually feeling? I'm going to breathe. I'm going to count into that breathe, and I'm going to allow myself to see what's going on. And generally, they're probably going to feel anxious, nervous, angry, frustrated, but just feel it. So breath work, I think it can be one of these things that people go, oh, I'll do breath work. They've got to learn all this stuff. oh my God, there's hundreds of hours I've got to do before I can implement that. That's bullshit. It's like, just sit down, be okay to breathe. And the other thing I'll tell clients, especially, even not clients, just people who ask about breath work, it's like, what is the one thing that we can't do without after a few minutes? We can do without water, food. We can do without that stuff for days on end. Food, we don't. There's breatharians on the planet. There's a hint in that. But we can't do without breathing. So what if we got good at breathing properly? That's, given that perspective too, it's like, oh, maybe you're right with that.
Yeah, most people don't give it a second thought, you know.
I operated all my life in fight or flight, and generally it was fight.
Yeah.
Generally it was fight. Face it head on. It served me in work. Something annoyed me or pissed me off, I'd do everything myself. I'd get the job done. I'd get the result. But I'd burn out. I'd piss everyone off. I had no friends because of it. People didn't want to work with me, yada, yada, yada. But I got a result. So that fight or flight was giving result. But when I started breathing, when I started yoga and coming into my body and stretching my body, everything changed and it was messy. Breathing. Even breath work. Yeah, sorry.
Is there a breath work exercise to help people go to sleep?
I use the box breathing. I actually use the box breathing.
Yeah.
That's what I use. And I'll breathe into it. And it's the breath holds in between, I feel, has all the benefit. And all I'll do that's different than using the box breathing during the day, during the night, I'll slow it down at night. Always through, in and out through the nose too. Always. Breathing through the nose activates the parasympathetic nervous system, works with that. Breathing through the mouth, the sympathetic.
Oh, that's so good, because a lot of, problems revolve around insomnia. So if there's and a lot of people take medication. So, if they can get off the sleep medication and, start using box breath, that's good to get off pharmaceuticals.
100%. There's another thing that works with the parasympathetic nervous system and whatever else of the body. It's another way that I believe is unhealthy. It can be a step. I'm not just going to be black and white and say stop using medical taking pills. No, it can be a step. Same as alcohol, I believe there is a step. Same with drugs, I believe there is some sort of step. Cold turkey is a tough road on anything. But if you can implement these things, go, okay, tonight, I generally have sleeping pills before I go to bed or something. How about tonight, before I go to the cupboard and grab them, I'm just going to lay down in bed. I'm going to put on some yoga nidra or something, listen to something that's maybe meditative, even if I'm unsettled and nervous or whatever, but I'm going to focus on consciously breathing. Even if you just don't do box breathing, just focus on breathing, counting to 10, in and out through your nose. Okay, that was hardcore. That was it. I'm still going to have them tonight, but I give it a go. First step. The next night, okay, I'm going to do this for 20 minutes. Or I'm going to go out and ground on the grass with my bare feet for 20 minutes first. Something really simple. Just do it a little bit in these little compounding steps for stuff like this. There will be a time where you're like, stuff it. I'm not having them tonight. I'm going to go to sleep. You might not go to sleep, but you've given it a crack. And of course, I'm a big proponent of seeing a therapist and stuff like this as well too. Like, it's generally my go-to. I won't let shit linger. If I can't do something myself after a week, I'm humble enough to go, okay, my way's not working. I'll go see someone. But yeah, sleep is a big thing. I know I'm a cranky bugger with, if I have broken sleep, I can function, but it's important. And for anyone listening out there, if you're having sleep problems, magnesium. The liposomal, is it? The liquid magnesium, the best.
Oh, good to know. Great. Thanks, Steve. Now, you opened up A Man Needs Space, and a lot of women watch this show. And, obviously it's a great insight for women to have as well. But I think that is one area that's sort of been neglected in a lot of men as men move into smaller houses and get busier lives. I mean, how important is it? And if they're in a small accommodation, what can they use as their man cave or their space? What?
It's an interesting one. I think the term having space, you can have a particular space. This is one of my spaces in our house. I've got stuff that like activates me, that has me feel like this is it. It's also my workspace, which is good. And I've also got garage, which has got some gym stuff. And I've got the yard. I've got spaces. I believe it's how I am, my intention for being in the space, number one. Because my best go-to for having space is to go 6 or 7 hours out into the mountains and into the bush where I am not going to run into a human. For men out there, it is important to define a space for yourself first and foremost, to be okay, because a lot of men want this, but there's elements in their life that are like, oh, but how can I say to my wife that I want all this space for myself? I want a man cave and all this. She's going to think ... Or no, I've only got space for this. That's not that important. So I'll sacrifice my space for myself because of ... Or I don't have the time to give myself space. So they make up all the reasons before they actually go, okay, I want space. I've got a little workshop thing beside my house there. So I can tinker with things like that. Even a space like that for a man is important. If you're looking to define your space as a man, like a doing space or something like that, a space to be, man cave is one that's thrown about, but I think the what a man cave looks like to a lot of people out there, it's this place where you've got a bar, fridge, it's stacked with beer, the boys come around, you play pool, you play darts, yada, yada, yada. I think the image of that even like paints a picture that's not healthy, but what about the space without all them things? Like, okay, I've got a garage. There's a dartboard in there, but that's actually one of my go-tos for anger. I'm going to throw darts at that red dot. But okay, I've got some gym equipment in there. I like it out there. I do some yoga out there some mornings. It's got a rough feel to it. I'll burn the incense to it. I'll set intention to it. But I know when I'm in that space, whatever I'm doing in that space is to meet my intention. My intention in the morning in that space, feel. Come back to what I'm feeling. How am I feeling this morning? Open up my body. Move some energy. It's my intention. If that space is for that, I have got little things like I've got that. It's a good anchor. The lion in the background. I'll come and sit with the lion some mornings in my space. My intention. I'm going to feel the lion energy, whatever that is for me. And I think for men out there, I think what it comes down to is I truly, truly believe one of our core values, you could say, it is freedom. As men, we need our freedom. We need it. There's any reason why society, the powers that think they're in charge of us, are trying to take away freedom and trying to demasculinize the men. Because at our core, if we don't have that, we feel contracted. We feel all the things that we might have felt when we were young, when we were left out, when we were unloved, when we were not supported, when we were helpless. We're feeling that more so now. But if we don't give ourselves permission to create our own space, to give ourselves our own freedom, then we're going to be at the mercy of that conditioning from society and all that. And yeah, I think, again, men and women listening out there, I'll tell a story for the women out there. I think this is good. This is my own story. Now, when I got with my beautiful wife, Chaitanya, she's 14 years younger than me, 13 years younger than me, which is cool and way more mature, of course. Women will know, women grow up way earlier. I'm okay to say that. Us men don't grow up till we're in our late 30s, some of us. But anyway, when we first got together, we did everything together. Like, we were having fun, we're getting to know each other, we're going on our adventures to the bush. Even in far north Queensland, I was taking her out to like crocodile-infested rivers and that. She was petrified, but it was fun. But that was my home. That was where I went to space. But I was bringing her into where I was having my space and fun. And that was good early on. But in time, I wondered why I was getting really frustrated with this. I'm like, I was like wanting to go away by myself. Now, we were still in the getting to know each other phase, even 10, 12 months down, 14 months down, before River came along, our son. And I was going away and I could tell it was bringing up a lot of stuff with her, a lot of abandonment, a lot of what is Steve really doing? Like, because before that, here I was going into personal development. I was surrounded by amazing women everywhere. I had women like in my messenger and everything. Now I wasn't doing anything of these, but it was this different world. So she had a lot of trust stuff there too. But all I was doing was going to outback Queensland to either go crystal hunting or fishing or like searching for crocs or whatever I was doing. That's truthfully what I was doing. She didn't get that. I needed to do it, but I was at the same time afraid to own that. And then I would project to her and I'm like, well, just trust me. Just trust me. It's none of your business. Like, like there was this period for a while. In time, lots of conversations, lots of triggers, lots of our own personal healing work around this, especially my wife. She's been on my journey is nothing. I don't like comparing, but she's been through many dark nights of the soul and some horrific stuff and done exceptional on a healing journey. But through our own healing and everything, we're able to start to get this understanding that she could see how different I was when I came back from these little trips away. And I needed them every month. I needed once a week, I needed a day to myself. So I needed that space. So then it sort of flipped after a while. She had clearly done more inner work than me. It was more trusting, because then I started to feel guilty for going on these trips. I'm like, because she was going through so much, especially when the birth came around, a river that was like so much trauma and everything in that with her. And I started to feel guilty and started to sacrifice these and not do them. So it flipped where she was like, you have to go away. You need to go away. You need space. Till this day, she calls me out on it every now and then. Go play golf. Go do this, because she can see it in me now. She can feel it in me, where I've been either working on the business, been helping a lot of people, had some big challenges this year in business, bigger wins. I think that's part and parcel with it. But then she'll be like, you don't need to put out more content. You don't need to do them extra calls. You don't need to do that extra training. You need to go play golf, go fishing, go away for 3 days. She's like literally gives me permission. And I think why I share that story with the men and women out there, I think this has been the biggest breakthrough we've had to make our relationship as strong as it is. Because it's the same with her. She loves hanging out with her girlfriends, doing her women's circles, going shopping, full permission. If money stuff comes in, full permission, trust. I see how she is when she hangs out with all her friends 4 days a week. I am so fine with that. And that, again, I think our relationship is, we really set out to make it a model for other couples out there. Our relationship, how self-aware we are, how we act in it. Again, we're not perfect. We get triggered. Oh, yeah. But this giving each other space and permission to do the things that light us up, that fill our cups, that's what makes it strong.
So good. And that's hasn't come up in this series before. So beautiful. Now we've got about half an hour left, Steve. And I know this is an amazing conversation. If you've got time, we can go over, but I want to open it up because I'd also like to talk about, your relationship, but I just wanted to open up the last half hour at the moment for what you would like to bring into this conversation that we haven't touched on.
Well, it's interesting because what we've been talking about, and I always trust this with interviews and calls and podcasts, even my own, has been perfect. I think one thing I'd like to bring in is where we are in the world right now with current times. A lot of people are witnessing the chaos and they're witnessing the problems and the troubles, and there's so much information out there. What I'm a big proponent of is keeping life simple and focusing on what you can control. This is both men and women there. It is information overload. If you are looking outside of yourself right now, you're going to find information that's going to draw you in. You're not going to find nothing. It's this huge trauma loop, I believe. And it's intentional to keep us distracted from our own power. So what I'll be saying to men out there especially is keep your life simple right now. Focus on what you can control and get better at that. Focus on your health first. Focus on yourself first. Then focus on your family. They're going to benefit from focusing on yourself and your health. It's like a positive side effect from that. You focus on them things and put all your effort into them and give them 100% and do your best. Yeah, your career and your job, they're still second and third fiddle to them other things. Get good at them. You're not going to be available for any of this chaos on the outside. It doesn't mean you don't care. Doesn't mean that you can't express your truth or speak your truth. But if shit's not working in your life, you need to focus on that. if you're not feeling how you want to feel, if you're not as healthy, if the results aren't what you want them, switch off from that world and be okay with it. You're not bypassing anything. It's like there's one of these terms that gets thrown out. Oh, you're spiritually bypassing. You don't care about the world stuff. You're just too no. If we all focused on ourselves and get better with ourselves, some of us are inclined from that place to still help people and express ourselves and lead and all that. That's what we're built for. But we only know that because we have focused on ourselves. We have come into our heart, and but that's not for everyone either. A lot of people don't know that. So that's something that I'm really big on. A lot of my friends I've seen get caught up in the influencer space, the truth space. Truth. What's truth? Like there's the information wars and all this sort of stuff. And I'd like to see them come back to this space because they could help a lot of people. So yeah, that's something. I don't know if you've got anything, especially through your interviews in that. Like I say, I mentioned a couple of the names of the men you've interviewed. Like I love guys like Jesse Elder. Like these men, like they're so in their heart now. They're such strong leaders. I don't know if there's another man that you've seen out there. I love a guy called Sean Whalen. Lions not sheep. Very, very hard hitting, but owns his truth, knows his place. And it started with him. No matter what success is, he just focuses on him, betterment in his life, and the service comes from there.
Yeah. Oh no, I've got other tangents we can go off on. I just always want to make sure that there's nothing that gets left unsaid that you would like to contribute.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's look at relationships then. You mentioned the space was maybe the most important one, but what other tips and tools can you give to men to improve relationships with, let's say, with women?
Yeah, cool. First and foremost, it's a relationship with yourself. Number one. A lot of men are really terrible communicators. This is something I'm continually working on because that communication generally comes from a place of like wearing the social mask or a hurt place, or I don't want to upset anyone, or whatever's going on internally. Improving communication is like one of the best things that I've ever committed to. But again, it can only come from that place of committing to being able to feel more and being okay to express my feelings, not to people, but just for myself, and come back to that place. If we improved communication in relationships, so many more relationships would be so much better. A lot of people probably wouldn't get into relationships that are unaligned, they wouldn't get in from a place where they're just going in from lack, or from like, oh, I just want to feel like I fit in, or where we're going to trauma bond with both our problems and come together and talk about our problems together, which is so common. So a couple of tools that I would use for this, again, it does come back to, for me, it comes back to what I use in my practices. Like it comes back to what I'm feeling. How am I bringing awareness and attention or focusing on the things I love about myself? What am I doing good? What am I doing better on? So it's my self-work that is always the key to making any relationship better. And it can be with a woman, it can be in business, it can be with friends, it could be with, everything's a relationship, in my opinion. And it all comes like from us. And on the communication thing, again, if you simply implement something to break when you're going into a communication, the trigger could be nervousness. It might be a bad thing. It might be angry. It might be like, oh my God, this woman's the one, or like this, and you got all your stuff come up. If you've got like a bit of something that can catch that trigger and just sort of break that. That's why I mentioned the little breathwork thing, just something that's like intentionally tripping up what I call the old hamster. So your behavior plays out and you blah all over the situation with your communication. If you can break that and just like breathe through it and then communicate, that's going to improve anything. So it's simple stuff. And I know when a lot of men that I work with, they're like, oh, but I've said this to my wife and I've done this. What do I need to say? I'm like, in communication, 7% of communication is words. 7%. Like if 7% of your communication is words, what's the other 93%? It's like your feeling, your energy, your body language. All these things, you can go and say the nicest, best, amazing, sweetest thing to your wife that you just had a fight with. But if you're going in there and you're like, I love you so much, and you can feel the anger and that, it means nothing. She's not hearing that stuff. So I think knowing that and understanding that, again, that's where my work comes in for men and women both. Like women, I've got amazing women clients. They're amazing. Like, I don't put it out there that I work with women. I always get women come to me. Women love listening to the podcast. They very interactive on my socials and that. They're the same in relationships. It's like they understand how important communication is. They'll give me plenty of examples where the communication from the man's not good, but men out there, it's not all us, by the way. It's like women, they like play a big part in this. And I just love the women in the world, especially since I've been on my journey, that they're the self-ownership and the things I've talked about for men. I feel like they're 20 years in front of us men, which is okay with this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
But
I
they
have
do
a
take
theory around that, Steve.
Hey?
I have a theory around that.
Well, I'd love to hear it. What's your theory around
Yeah,
it?
I think that the feminine energy in general had to heal first, so that we are now in a soft, welcoming place for men to be able to drop their defenses and come into that healing space. Because while the feminine energy was wounded, we were attacking and defending and manipulative and controlling and all that, which made men more defensive and more on the attack. So we had to heal first the feminine energy to come into that open heart space to now welcome our men home so they can drop their defenses and also heal without fear that we're going to lash
That's not
out
a
at
theory.
them.
That's a line truth. And I totally resonate with that. And my own journey, that's what I've experienced. I started with like a man mentor, but my true mentors earlier on were women. Younger than me, more successful, but they were doing the work to open up, to be more receptive, to provide safer spaces for me. And that was a huge part of my journey, because I was very hard on the surface and very not trusting of the feminine, so to say. So you're spot on with that. And I see that that's the way I feel that has been the path for it. But men need to be able to trust in that too. It doesn't mean women are better. But again, the social conditioning is at play, and it's evident at the moment and manifest at the moment, the different agendas at play that are doing their best to hammer in, like even the feminine movement and all this that's so distorted. All these things that men have we're faced against. We need to trust the women too. We need to trust through our hurt from our past experiences. We need to trust that we need to feel that hurt, but we can only overcome that hurt if we learn to trust. And whether it is trusting another man first and foremost, again, get a coach, get a therapist, or go to men's circle. Trust men first. If that's going to help you, sweet. But you gotta come back and you gotta be able to trust the women. You gotta trust the feminine that is receptive to this, that is supportive, that is nurturing, that does hold the space. I'm not talking about women either, and you're not. It's not just women. It's like trust that feminine too, because we have that in us.
Yeah,
Our
exactly.
our mum's stuff's coming up here.
No, it's so good. This trust issue is massive as well, and I know there's 100 different scenarios, but what came through to me as you were talking about that, and I'd be interested to get your perspective. Like, I think I always have, but let's say definitely now, I always trust until I'm given a reason not to trust. But most people go in with distrust until they've decided that they have a reason to trust, which may never come. What do you think about that?
I love like influence stuff and all that. And when I started learning about influence and techniques and all things, I learned some really not of the highest ones, but also learned about a thing called social proof. And it is like seeing someone else do something first, or seeing enough people trust something else first before we act on it. It's a big thing for people, and a lot of people aren't trusting, and that is their go-to now, and they need to see it happen again and again and again and again. They need a lot of that social proof to there instead of backing themselves because of whatever they've been hurt, past experience. I see it a lot. I do a lot of work in the digital crypto space and things like that, in the investment space. I see it a lot show up in that. People have got past things. They need to see so much of it from someone else, or someone has to go first again and again before they will actually act on anything. And again, I'm very trusting now, but that comes from a place of me being in my power. I got past experiences. I've been burnt, let down before, hurt, all these things, but I've taken responsibility for them. So it comes back to my point earlier about trust comes from being okay to take radical responsibility that everything has happened in our life we're at the center of it. We are responsible for it. Doesn't mean it's some people have done some certain things, haven't been the highest, but we were the ones who were in that situation. And it's a hard one for a lot of people sort of to take on, especially if they've been through really, really hardcore stuff. My beautiful wife, like sexually abused as an infant by her dad, like horrific, some of the stuff. But what an example for radical responsibility, forgiveness, all this sort of stuff. So that ties into the trust stuff too. And again, this is one of the things we can do on the surface level. We can change this with behavior. Just get out of our comfort zone and go, yeah, I don't trust this now, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to be vulnerable.
Yeah, and I think, once you're on this healing journey and you've dealt with, let's say, and healed from a lot, many situations, pretty much that you've got the toolkit to deal with anything. Throw anything at me, I'll be able to handle it. I might go through a lot of pain and emotional distress, but at the end of the day, it will make me stronger and I will be able to handle it. I won't crumble into, victimhood. So I think it is part of the healing journey, because once you've overcome so many hurdles, that whatever life throws at you, you can deal with it.
Yeah, 100%.
Trust can open up.
Yeah, 100%. I can give 1,000 examples to people of like me, like getting out of my comfort zone. It's thrown around there and simple things, and trust has been at the core of it. When I got out of the mines, I got into network marketing. I'm like, I've got to sell stuff now, and I can't even smile or look people in the eyes because I didn't trust or whatever. Like I got into sales. I got all this other stuff coming up. I have to be around people. So there's 1,000 examples we could probably both give to people out there, but trust is like a muscle. How do you build a muscle? You got to train it.
Yeah, and it's good just to have awareness to it, to bring it into the conversation. So now, it is almost time, but I wanted to touch on yoga. Now, it's fascinating, Steve, because, well, I'm a yogi and probably everyone knows that, but I'm surprised with your number 46 Heart Warrior. And I would say at least 30 of them have said that yoga has been an important part of their journey. And it's interesting because a lot of men, until they get into yoga, and this is my perception, it's like, oh, I'm not flexible, or it's for women, or, so I always say, can you please speak man to man about yoga?
Well, first and foremost, yoga was brought about by men for men.
Yeah.
I only learned this recently because my beautiful wife does a practice called Koya. It's a feminine embodiment movement practice, which just adds a few things in there. There's more flow in there. And that's one of the things she learned about when she was going on that. But for me, yoga, man to man, a lot of our trauma, a lot of our stuff as men is stored in our hips, in the body. It plays out in the physical body. I remember when I first done yoga about 8 years ago, I couldn't sit down and cross my legs. I couldn't. I had to sit with my legs straight out. Now, yes, I've got a lot of old footy injuries and all that sort of stuff, but I was very rigid, and I have had a lot of trauma and stuff in my hips. And also what I believe with that, I learned about being open and receptive, the feminine. And that was like, if you go into the feminine sort of being, and the body represent with the feminine, being open, and the work around there is very important. So for me, I knew that as soon as I had a lot of pain when I was doing yoga, with the intention of like, all right, cool, I can't cross my legs, I look like a dickhead. That was one of the things. But I'm like, I really want to cross my legs. All right. So I got to work on that, and yoga was a big part of that. But also yoga was a big part of helping me feel again, because I had a lot of soreness in my body, had a lot of inflammation. It helped me bring awareness to my body more. And again, this is so important to me and my practice, and me with my emotions, and me with my results in life. Everything like I do is for a feeling, and they've all got energy attached to them. If I can't feel in my body and I'm avoiding it, my body's not, it's not about being flexible for me. It's not about being having movement of that. No, it's about like all this stored, stuck emotion in my body. What is this rigidity? What is this, whatever it is that doesn't feel good? So yoga for me, I don't, basically what I do now, like for the last few years, I was going for classes for a while. I've done a lot of stuff online. I could take yoga classes if I wanted. I haven't gone out to get the training in it to be a teacher or anything. I haven't. But I use it every day with the intention of coming into my body, feeling my body, opening up my body. I can do more than cross my legs now, by the way. And I have released a lot of stuff from my body. And I am, if you want, I am way more flexible now. I am way more fluid in like not only my body, but that is in my life. And I think it's representative from like yoga as being one of the key tools or practices that's been at the core of that.
Definitely, because do you go along with the learning that all our we have our physical field, and then we have our I think it's like emotional and mental fields and energy fields, and everything that's stored in our emotional field manifests in our physical body. So any stiffness, illness, disease, anything at all is stored in the physical body, and yoga gives us postures that help release that emotional stored energy.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Like even the anything in the body, like generally it's energy, stuck energy, emotion. It's simple. When that emotion is stagnant in the body, it's going to blow out in your liver or your kidneys or whatever. And especially with men, I'm like, a lot of men, even my journey, like I was already on a healing journey, but I had like these love handles forever. And I'm like, until I did the emotional work around and release the emotion, they didn't go anywhere. A lot of men build up fat reserves around here, and even if they're training in the gym, it's like because they've got stuck emotion in the body. And yoga and poses, and I combine it with like breath work, and I do some Chinese medicine. I do a lot of, every day I'm doing organ release, things like this, bringing attention to them parts of my body, is all to move that's stuck energy or just to keep it flowing.
Yeah, so good, so good. It's didn't expect that so many men would, healed men, men that on their healing journey would have incorporated yoga, but it's amazing. Where does the heart come into all this, Steve?
The heart. I believe I lead from the heart. That's what I believe. I believe the heart is truth. I believe that's what gets. I've got a message to share with people of the world. I've got a truth to share. It comes from the heart. It's not the voice. It's not the words. It's felt. I think it's what makes the difference. I think it's the thing that helps people make decisions the most that are around you. When you're in your heart, when you're coming from that place, again, you don't have to be a big influencer. It might be in your family. It might be just with your wife. Again, it's not the head. It's just part of the system. It's everything from the heart. And I think for anyone listening out there, both men and women, both, if you do the work, if you're on a healing journey, don't worry about the mindset and all that. That'll come. Like get to work on healing any hurt, anything that's layering around your heart. Get to work on that. You bust that open, and that will transform your life. I promise you. It is at the core of it.
Amazing. You touched on fatherhood and Little River, and I know that's a huge part of the joy in your life. So what, and you also spoke about, your relationship with your father in the beginning. So what are you doing differently, and what fathering tips have you got for the men out there?
Have you got another hour? Because this is at the core of my mission.
Right. If you want, we can roll for
About cracking my heart open. I think there's a couple of things that we can't do a course, we can't get taught, we can't read it in a book, and becoming a parent or a father is one of them. Like I remember my wife had a C-section. It was messy, it was scary, all the things. And I remember like River being held up over the curtain by the doctor and this squawking little thing. And I was just like, I went from, my nervous system was in overload. I was like, and I just went, wow, I've never been like so wide open before. It was this freaky moment where I've never felt so deeply and I've never been so there. And from that point on, it was like, it sort of busted through the fear, and it's like, holy shit, this is actually where responsibility comes in. Don't worry about me coaching people and yada, talking or spitting all these things to, you got to take I had to take responsibility then. And I knew from the outset, I'd already had a lot of awareness around like how my dad was growing up. Again, I wouldn't have all the skills I've got now, like the bush stuff, the adventure and all that without my dad. I wouldn't have the work ethic. My dad was heart-centered. He helped so many people, even though he was a builder and a supervisor and that, but he still was always giving and giving and giving. I got so many great things from my dad, but one thing I'd already decided that I was not going to focus on my work first, and that was a priority. Yes, I was there to provide to a point, but me and my queen have got a cool thing going on. We're awesome at what we do. And like, I'm not going to be this provider who had to spend time away from my son. That's not it. I prioritize time with my son every day. That is the priority. Even as he grows up now, he's got to a point now where he tells me to get away from him. He's like, I need space, Dad. Sweet.
Yeah.
Every day. If the only days I'm not here is if I'm going to the gym in the morning, but I just communicate that with him. I'm going to the gym. Mum's going to be here with you in the morning because he loves hanging out with me in the morning. I go away with him all the time. I talked earlier about me and needing my space. I always go away with just me and him all the time, but not on a weekend, not on a Sunday. I will prioritize that in my schedule. I'll put that first, because even though sometimes it can come to the detriment of some income or something else that I want to do for myself, that lights me up. And he's modeling everything that I do. So as a family unit, to give him that time, to give him that love, not smother him. I'm a hard ass still, don't worry about that. I'm like, he doesn't walk all over me. I'm still teaching him like, hey, come on, you want to be a king, dude? This is how you go about it. But that was the biggest thing I sort of committed to as a father. And again, it has left me at times. Look at when all the lockdowns and stuff happened, we lost all of our income like that. Did I stop prioritizing going away and spending time with my son? No, that was the priority. Did I prioritize on my emotions and feelings and stuff and working through that? I upped my game in that area. I prioritized living through my passions and joy more. Just because we didn't have a cash flow, it didn't matter. I wasn't going to let him pick up on my scarcity and my fear and just stay in that. Not that I'm hiding emotions from him. He's a powerful little unit. He can feel everything I'm feeling, but he models it. He models how I deal with it, how I navigate it. So that's been my intention from day dot. Even to this day, when the lockdowns happened, we set up a kindy here in our house. We had a big lot of space up there, pretty intense. For 18 months, we've had a little kindy where he's in our house. He's got his little friends that are playing and everything. They're doing things different. They're learning about emotions and feelings in our little environment. So how I show up as a father and like holding space for that, I know that's going to benefit not just him, like those around him that are growing up there, the parents that are involved in it. It's like this example that I just choose to be. And I'm like, seriously, a lot of it I'm running blind and I'm okay with that. I'm making a lot of it up as I go and I'm just in super trust.
So good, Steve. Okay, tell us about your podcast and let us know, please, where people can find you.
Awesome. First and foremost, I've loved this interview. It's been fantastic. These are all the things that I love talking about on the podcast, the Wild Man Revolution podcast. It's been going for about a year now. I haven't really built it out. I haven't really got it out there till recently. It's getting out there now, but you can find it on iTunes and Spotify and on YouTube. I do visuals because I have a range of men. The premise from the start has been highlighting men doing great things in the world. And I set out from the outset of like, I'm surrounded by amazing men. I am. A part of my journey, I didn't feel like I was. But in time, I've just been surrounded by these amazing men. I do feel like I'm at the center of it too, and I'm okay with that. There was one part of me that was like, no. They're better than me. They're on a pedestal, yada, yada. These are my peers. So I've been interviewing my peers for the last bit over a year. Now, again, some of them are very well known and influential in their own right, online or whatever they're teaching in their craft is, but others are young guys that are just doing exceptional in the world. I've got a couple of clients that I've interviewed on there, got them out of their comfort zone, but they're just 21-year-olds and 22-year-olds, like just serving at the highest level already, like putting their energy into the world, just in their neighborhood, not doing anything, like just being a good physiotherapist, being like good at like financial markets and things like this, but in their genius zone. So there's interviews from them. we do talk about the crypto space a little bit and the investment space, but we talk about men in general. Some really cool stuff comes up, some knockabout stuff, some fun stuff, some serious stuff. One of my most recent interviews, and I'm going to plug in here, I'd love you to do an interview with Mr. Aaron Baldock.
Okay. Send me a link and I'll get in touch with him.
Really grounds the podcast too. He's very, very grounded. He's clear communicator, exceptional. So everyone can, check the podcast out there. I'm recording some videos with some tips and tricks and some mindset stuff and all that I'm plugging into that now. So and all the other socials. On Facebook, I've got the Wild Man Revolution business page there. But my Facebook is where you're going to see the most real stuff. It's just organic. I like going and sharing a bit from the family and a bit of the work I'm doing and whatever is valuable. I'm on Insta as well. I'm on Telegram as well. I've got all the places. But
we'll drop all those links in the description below, Steve. What's the final message to men?
This is at the core of it. Come back to own your wild, your inner wild, your power, your strength. Be okay with it. Come into your true, into your heart, you could say. And not only come back to feeling that, be okay to be fully expressed in it. And that's where the wild comes from, that inner wild, let it out. That would be my message. And do the freaking work around it.
Oh, such a good conversation. Thank you very much, Steve. It's been an absolute pleasure. And everyone, if you could please like, share, subscribe, get Steve's message out there. And I think I did say it in the intro, but this is the last Heart Warriors until after Christmas because I'm actually heading out to Katajuda and Uluru. Have you ever been out there?
Do you know what? I've been to so many places in Australia. I haven't been there yet.
This is a sacred masculine site.
It's so interesting. Well, I'm at what is it, Wollumba now, Mount Warning, which is masculine initiation too. So I feel like I'm here for these last couple of years for this. So this may be the confirmation that I'm getting called elsewhere now.
And, it's only like 60K from Uluru, and you can fly, like there's an airport right there, a little tiny airport that you can fly to. So, yeah, definitely. I'll be out, heading out in a couple of days. I'll be out there for the solstice and coming back for Christmas. But so we'll give Heart Warriors a break, but we'll definitely be back at the end of this year and well into next year with, because I've said I'm going to interview 100 men at least. And of course, we've got our Man Speak series running as well. So thanks everyone for being here. Thanks to you, Steve. And bye.
Thank you, Gemma. Bye.